Hi, so I'm going to go over the software that I wrote that will calculate which equipment will give you the highest experience rate for your stats when you're fighting any monster or even pool of monsters like in Nightmare Zone. Before we can figure out what the best equipment is, we first have to be able to calculate the experience or damage rate, and there are three numbers that go into this: the accuracy, the max hit, and the weapon attack speed. The attack speed just comes from whatever weapon you're using, and the max hit comes from your damage skills and your damage equipment bonuses, and your accuracy comes from comparing your attack bonuses and attack skills to your opponent's defensive skills and equipment. The equations that take those skills and equipment bonuses and give us the accuracy and max hit are well known, so we have to try to put them together to calculate an experience rate. Okay, so your opponent always starts with some health, and each attack you essentially make two dice rolls. One that determines whether or not you're going to make a successful hit, which is your accuracy, and the amount of damage that you do if that was a successful roll. You then iterate this until your opponent dies. So the question is, what is the average number of attacks needed to bring your opponent's health to 0? This would let us calculate damage rates and therefore experience rates. There are many different models that you can make to handle all the probabilities. You can pick any model that you like and they'll all perform okay, but this problem was actually solved exactly by a Reddit user of this name using what's called a Markov chain analysis. The math is pretty heavy, but it just means that we can now calculate exact experience rates. So now we can move on to solving the actual optimal equipment problem. The first thing to notice is that all of these equipment stats, there's no function or reason behind how they're generated. And so that means that we have to brute force at least over a subset of all the possible sets of equipment. The problem with this is that there's so many possible combinations of equipment that it would be impossible to compute. So we're going to need to reduce it. We know that you don't need to compare a bronze dagger against a rapier, but something that you might not really think about is that you do actually have to compare something like a bronze warhammer to that rapier, because imagine you had an enemy that had an incredibly high slash and stab defense to the point where the rapier had essentially no accuracy. Then the warhammer could actually be a better weapon. This is obviously an exaggeration, but it showcases that there is some logic that we can use to reduce these sets. To simplify the problem, let's fix the attack style to stab so that now of all those 14 equipment stats that matter, only 2 of them will have an impact: the attack stab bonus and the strength bonus. This massively reduces the amount of information we have to consider, and now it becomes a lot more straightforward to see how we can eliminate a lot of the options for any given slot. So if we compare those two numbers between different equipment pieces, we would simply eliminate all of the ones that weren't better than anything in any respect. The final thing to do is to add special effect bonuses for the equipment that has them and add that into the pool of what we were considering. So now that the part that you've been waiting for, let's actually use it. Okay, so let's say that we wanted to fight a monster. How would we actually go about using this? The first thing to do is to enter our stats, particularly the combat stats. Some of the other skills might be required, for example, to tell you if you can wear a particular item, like mining would be required to know if you can wear a dragon pickaxe, which it might have to consider. Once you do that, this section here, the ignore section, is going to ban equipments from being considered. So for example, the vast majority of people will not have a max cape, so that's ignored. Things like barbarian assault equipment won't be used, and you can add your own custom stuff in case you don't meet the requirements for one of the things it thinks is optimal. You can also go to the adjustments tab, which will change the requirements for certain items. This is because it's pulled from a database, and certain items, most notably Barrow's gloves, are locked behind a quest, not an actual skill requirement. And so what I've done is I've used the lowest level skill player that I found that could actually complete the quest, and you can alter that to your liking. That being said, ignore is a lot easier because for a static set of levels, you might as well just ignore it if you know that you can't meet the requirements. Then we come down here and we pick a monster. So let's type in the name of something like sand crabs, and you see that there are 2 IDs that are given to us, and that's because there are just multiple models in the game. And if we check the 2 IDs, we actually find that they all have the same stats. If we're skeptical of something, we can click See on Wiki and it will open up the browser to that monster, and we'll be able to compare the stats with what we get here. You can also change the experience rate, give it a custom name, and add the sand crab to your pool of monsters. Then decide which attack style you want to train or which combat skill you want to train. Range and magic unfortunately are not supported, so you'll have to stick to melee training for now. Hopefully that will be sorted out soon. But then you can pick a potion, like for example a super potion, which will increase your accuracy and damage, and the term accuracy and damage is used instead of attack and strength because it's more generic, right? So for ranging potion it also makes sense. You can take the potion to be constant. You could also do a dose after. So what that means is our attack, that we will take a dose after our attack is boosted below, and I'll make it 7. So if we go back to Runelight and I take a drink of a super attack potion, we see here that my boost is 17. And so when that boost falls below 7, I will re-drink. And that's the pattern that the program is going to try to mimic. Then we can come down to prayer. I will use Piety. Again, accuracy and damage is to make it generic for all of those, because if we come to here, I might choose to only use strength, only use attack, or both. And then there are special equipments. So here, this is for DH. If I set it to 0, it means I'm not going to consider DH, but if I set it to 1, it means that I'm going to keep my health at 1 on average while fighting some opponents. I can also consider other sets like Obsidian, Berserker Necklace Void, and Elite Void. I won't consider these two because I don't believe that sand crabs can be assigned a Slayer task, although maybe they can. And they are not undead. I can click Evaluate. And it will come up with the optimal set of equipment that I can wear. The other thing that it will tell me is how long it takes on average to kill an opponent, 8 seconds, how much experience per hour I get, and how many kills per hour I can make. So this is all assuming perfect play, constant combat, and things like that. So this acts as more of an upper bound than an exact prediction. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't afford these types of equipments. If I click on this, it'll actually open the wiki page and I can check the current cost of it, which is 300 million GP, which I don't have. So what I can do is I can press Shift and click on that, and it will add it to the ignore list automatically. I can use a wild card to get rid of anything that starts with Inquisitors to simplify that. I will do the same with Infernal Cape and this and all the things that I can't really afford. This is more reasonable, but I still can't afford the rapier, so I'm going to run it again. Can't afford that. Try again. Okay, so this is a reasonable set of equipment. It's telling me that the obsidian armor is the best, giving me about 7.7 seconds for every kill. I can also do a histogram, which might be interesting to some people, which evaluates all of those sets and tells you the frequency of what experience rates you get. So here it kind of tells me that there are 3 groups of equipment, some that perform very well, mediumly well, and relatively poorly. That might be of interest to you, and let's look for what isn't included in the obsidian set, or what's the optimal set of equipment excluding the obsidian set, and we can ignore that. Abyssal Tentacle, that makes sense. So you can go through, once you set this up the first time, banning all the things that you aren't feasibly going to use, it becomes a lot easier. I want to see something high level like a Rune Dragon and what the optimal equipment is for me. So I'm going to try running that again. And because the Dragon Hunter equipment and stuff is not in this list here, so it's not being considered, but because I can't afford that anyway, it doesn't really matter. So all of this stuff is obviously really expensive. I'm just going to get rid of it again. Wow, okay, so obsidian armor is actually the best weapon to use against rune dragons, except for a rapier and dragon hunter stuff. Wow, that seems crazy. Okay, what happens if I get rid of obsidian? Whoa, I'm pretty sure that's like half the experience rate. So all of these weapons cost at least 30 mil, with the Abyssal Bludgeon being the cheapest and everything else being like well over 100 mil, pretty much. So it turns out that it's... Okay, so let's look. The kills per hour are 28. What if I add the obsidian back in? What are those kills per hour? Wow. 48 divided by 28. Wow! Obsidian is 70% better for rune dragons. I have to go try that out. So I geared up for rune dragons, and I'm going to try to time it using a stopwatch to see if like how well the agreement is. And one thing that's really funny is that it's telling me to use an Arty Cloak 2 because I don't have an Arty Cloak 3. But instead of a fire cape, which I just think is pretty funny, because if we look at rune dragons, I guess they just have so much stab defense. Oh, I guess they just have so much defense. Anyway, that it thinks that it's worth it. So it's telling me that each kill should take about 76 seconds. So let's go see. That's a lot of S's. Let's go see how this goes. I don't have the best defense, so this might not be great, and although this has a similar offensive capability as some of the best stuff, it doesn't have the defensive ability as like what this guy is wearing. That being said, I'm going to try to time each kill to see how well it agrees, and I'm going to pause the timer if I ever need to eat food, and I'll stop attacking and stuff like that, just to try to be as precise as possible. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so one thing that I forgot was that the rune dragons can actually heal themselves, and in this fight it healed 70 health. So what I did was I took the time where the rune dragon first fell below 70, and that was 1 minute and 26 seconds. I also did 4 extra kills, which brought the average time to 1 minute and 37 seconds, with a standard deviation of about 7. And so this just about agrees with the corrected time of 1 minute and 30 seconds. But this is a really hard thing to time, and I only did a couple samples. This is an open source project, and I'm sure that the community would have hundreds of ideas. So if you're interested in contributing or you just want to check it out, you can go to the GitHub page or check for the Discord information in the description. Thanks for watching.